the friends that I wanted to play music with would sell their gear to buy like drugs or alcohol was like a thing that started to creep in. My objective was do the absolute minimum in high school and still graduate. Like that was kind of my mentality. I didn't care about grades. I was 28, so I still didn't know what I wanted to do like when I grow up.
Chris Williams started without a plan, printing shirts, booking shows, sleeping on floors to save money for tour. He chose to go straight edge early on. No drinking, no drugs. All he wanted was to play. Small wins stacked up. Crowded rooms followed. But good things never last, and the band soon broke up.
I don't know if you ever feel this, but there's days that I have where I feel like the best, like on top of the world. And there are days where that feeling you just described, I question whether I will ever go back. Oh, hey, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Chris, could you tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up?
Yeah, let's see where to start. Yeah, so my dad followed around a few jobs, maybe until I was about 4. So before I really remembered things, like we lived in Ohio, Utah, Michigan, and then he finally ended up in Seattle, in Kent, Washington, which is in the suburbs of Seattle. And that's really where like my core memories come from is from living in Kent and growing up in Kent, Washington.
Okay. And how long were you in Kent? Like at what age did you kind of like branch out from there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my whole life, or my whole like childhood life, like all through school, basically. We moved a couple times within Kent, but all through high school. And then once I graduated, I really had a desire to like experience urban life a little bit more, because Kent was like really suburban, cul-de-sac life.
Yeah,
which was nice to grow up in, but as a young adult, I really wanted to experience the city, and so I moved to Seattle as soon as I could.
Okay, so Seattle was the next step for you?
Yeah.
Because you wanted that city life?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What was why did you pick Seattle specifically?
I mean, it was the closest big city.
Yeah.
I spent, my friends and I would make excursions into the city to go do stuff that you couldn't do in the suburbs, but go to shows, go skateboarding. We skateboarded obviously a lot in the suburbs, but like there were just really cool spots like in Seattle that you could go to, and just the energy of the city was something that I was craving.
When you were a kid in Kent, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know if I really thought that far ahead. I didn't. I grew up a skateboarder kid, and all I really wanted to do was skateboard, and I wasn't really thinking too much into the future beyond like I wanted to get really good at skateboarding, and if I became a pro skater, then awesome. I don't think I ever really thought I was going to be a pro skateboarder or a pro snowboarder. I snowboarded too, but but that was like the priority for me. It was like, okay, I'm at school. This sucks. I hate it here. But as soon as I'm done, I can go skateboarding, right?
Yeah.
It's Friday. I'm at school. It sucks. I hate it here. But afterwards, I can go snowboarding.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, that was the focus, was like not necessarily like, what am I going to do when I grow up, but what am I going to do this afternoon?
Yeah.
So
did you have kind of like a little crew of people that you would skate with?
Yeah, definitely. I had a few different friends like that, circles for skateboarding and also for snowboarding. And we just kind of would go into the city or go around to different skate spots around town.
Yeah.
Together.
What?
We would my parents had like a huge station wagon, because I had 4 sisters, all younger.
Okay.
And so we had this big station wagon. We just all pile in, like fill it up with as many skaters as we could, and just roll around into different spots and hop out and go session some curbs or stairs or whatever.
Do you still keep in contact with any of those people that were kind of part of that group?
Not really. Over the years, we just kind of like grew different ways, different priorities, different interests. So
For sure. When you were in like high school, you said you kind of just got through high school. You wanted to skate.
mhm.
Did you struggle in high school, like with kind of the academic side?
Yeah, I mean, from a grades perspective, absolutely. I mean, from
Yeah.
my perspective, like my objective was do the absolute minimum
Yeah.
that I could do in high school and still graduate. Like that was kind of my mentality. I didn't care about grades. I just wanted to like, do my stuff. And, I kind of knew like the baseline that I could skate by, no pun intended, but skate by and,
Yeah.
get horrible grades, but still graduate and not have to stay in school an extra year or not have to drop out. Cause that was never really like an option for me dropping out. It wasn't something I wanted to do by any means, but I also like didn't want to excel in school at that point in my life.
What did your parents do for work?
My father was an engineer and then a manager at Boeing. So, in Seattle, now there's like millions of big corporations in Seattle, but back then Boeing was like one of the main job providers in the area. So like, I don't know, like 20% of households worked for Boeing for some plant or another. So,
Yeah.
and then my mom was a stay-at-home mom raising an army of kids. So
Yeah. 5 kids? 'Cause you have
Yeah.
4 sisters?
Yep.
Wow. What's that like, man? That's
Yeah, it's funny. People ask when I say I have 4 sisters. People ask, "Oh, what was that like?" But like, I don't know. Like, I don't really have anything to compare it to.
yeah, for sure.
It was just life. They were all younger than me. They all kind of grouped together and did their thing, and so I kind of went and did my own thing.
Yeah.
So
So I know we've kind of talked about this, but what, like growing up, kind of knowing where you landed now,
Mhm.
right? Obviously, you kind of landed in the music industry
Mhm.
at some point. When did that kind of start, and what would you say from your childhood started kind of shaping kind of who you became in the music
Mhm.
industry?
Mhm. I mean, probably this is just an extension of skateboarding.
Yeah.
So industry, what do you say, music industry, like loosely, as loosely defined industry as possible. Because basically I got into punk rock music through skateboarding. And through punk rock music, I got into hardcore music, which is a small distinction that like a lot of people don't really know about. But it's just like punk kind of originated in the UK, and it was I don't know, much more like colorful, mid-tempo, and then hardcore kind of originated in the US, and it was a little bit more like working class, a lot more aggressive even than punk rock, faster. I digress, but I got into those kinds of music, which I still love today, through skateboarding.
Okay.
And so, I would listen to these bands, and then I would get into other bands from them. I would watch skate videos and catch like different bands. And I don't know, from a pretty young age, I got a guitar somehow. I think I had a friend who played guitar, and I always thought it was cool, but I just found pieces of a guitar once in our garage that my dad had like built an electric guitar when he was younger, and so I put it together, and that was kind of my first guitar. And yeah, I just kind of got into playing guitar from that, but it was always I don't know, being a musician is such a to the general world, like it's like rock star stuff, right? It's like, oh, these people, they're up on this pedestal and they're so talented and they make this music, and you kind of like um uh idolize them and put them up on this pedestal that doesn't seem attainable. But through like punk rock, particularly hardcore, and when you go to these more local shows, which I started doing, as I got into the music, I wanted to go see the bands. And I remember like one of my kind of core memories that shaped it was kind of an aha moment as I went to go see like one of my favorite bands at the time, which was a band called Seaweed. They're from Tacoma. And I came out of the bathroom and the guitar player was just standing right there talking to another guy. And it was just like, huh, that's like the guy from Seaweed, like the band that I'm here to see. And he's not like in some dressing room, like eating all the green M&Ms, you know, he's just like talking to this other person right in front of the bathroom. And so you kind of realize that these are just like normal people who are just playing music. And then punk rock music obviously is a lot easier to play than a lot of other styles of music, because it's just mostly bar chords. You know, you're playing power chords and your fingers stay the same and you just put them on different parts on the guitar. So that's kind of how I got into playing music. And I don't remember what the original question was, but
yeah, well, so it's weird because with my experience with hardcore and punk, the people that I know that come from that industry, they all kind of have this origin story of either they had the parents that were like either kind of checked out, right? And they kind of like all the skater kids are kind of like this, right? All of us had that like that experience where somebody's parents were like the cool parents and they let us kind of do whatever. But in the hardcore and punk scene specifically, there's a lot of kids that I feel like found it because they were struggling with something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say, like from your perspective, you know, was any of that kind of something that that drove you into that scene, like specifically for hardcore and punk? Like, do you feel like what drew you to that specific kind of scene of people and sound, and you know what I mean? There's a lot of people out there that they just kind of, it seems like they were all struggling and they all kind of found this thing that they collectively I don't know what the word is, but culminate around.
Sure. No, and that's absolutely true. You know, the punk and hardcore scene, and it really any independent like DIY music community, even beyond music, like any kind of I don't know, we jokingly like refer to jiu-jitsu as like a health cult.
Yeah.
But like any like community like that, there's usually like a high percentage of people that they're missing a piece of community in their life. And so like that sense of belonging and being able to relate to different people on that level is what really draws them to it. For me, that aspect drew it to me because I understand the importance of it, but it wasn't necessarily something that I was missing in my life. Like my parents are still married. Like our home was a very, not a broken home. My parents are very loving parents. My family was a healthy family, still is. There's always, everyone has their issues and, they get through them, but it wasn't like I came from a broken home and found this thing. But I don't know, I was just kind of like a weird, awkward kid. And I don't know, just the aggression and intensity of punk rock music is what really drew me to it in the first place. And then like ultimately that sense of community, not just for myself, but like recognizing the importance of a community for everyone, like a place that people can come together and like do stuff together, collaborate and like do cool things. And that's like a really important part of the hardcore scene. Is it's not for the most part commercially attractive music, because it's just like fast music, power chords, people just yelling, not actually singing notes for the most part. And so it's not like a widely commercially accepted thing that major labels are chasing. Like obviously there's instances where exceptions to the rule and people break out to that bubble, but so because there's not like label interest, there's a lot of DIY ethic, that the do-it-yourself mentality, like participating in the scene, and even where there is There's hardly, even where there is interest from major labels, like I think that DIY ethic is like such an important part to like a healthy hardcore scene, is like people need to feel like they are a part of it and contributing to it, and not just like you're going to a show and this band that's up on a pedestal is performing to you. It's like you're going to a show, you're participating, you're giving that band that you love your energy, they're giving it back to you. It's reciprocal. Not only that, but I can go home, I can pick up guitar, I can start my own band.
Yeah. I
can play with them, or I can, you know, maybe I don't want to even play music. Maybe I want to book shows. So I ask 3 bands that I like. I'm like, hey, I'm doing a show. Like, here's the spot. Like, will you guys play? And, you know, or, you know, people that do fanzines, people that start record labels, like all that stuff is like crucial for the health of the music scene, and then also like for the mental health of the individuals.
Yeah. So when you kind of started joining bands, right? Were you still in high school, or was that kind of after you moved?
I tried to start some in high school, but like most of my friends that had instruments were into like the style of music that I like, had other priorities. And when I say other priorities, they just wanted to party.
Yeah.
So like drugs or alcohol was like a thing that started to creep in when I was in high school. And when I was trying to make those connections, like the friends that I wanted to play music with would sell their gear to buy like, you know, a case of beer or like a 40 sack or whatever. And that was like something that was always super frustrating to me, because it was something that I wanted to do, but like I couldn't find people that were on the same page with me, and they had these other priorities that were getting in the way. So I, you know, from a very young age decided I didn't want to like do any drugs or like drink or smoke or anything like that. And that was like a pretty big contributing factor to why is like, why are you doing like this stuff? I don't understand like why you're selling your stuff to do this thing that's so fleeting, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
And so it kind of pissed me off. It was like, I'm so frustrated because I want to play music with you, but you don't have a guitar anymore because you just sold it so that you could go buy some weed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that was like such a visceral reaction that I had to it, that has formed like a very core like foundation of a piece of me, because like to this day I still don't like drink or smoke or anything like that, because it's just a part of who I am. But that's really kind of like a big catalyst for it.
For sure. Yeah, I was in a very similar boat where I tried to start multiple bands with people, and that was always because I actively chose not to smoke weed. After a certain age. I dabbled a little.
Yeah, sure.
Bit. And that was, I got kicked out of many bands because they didn't like that I would just sit there and watch them smoke. So they
wanted someone to smoke with them.
Yeah, especially some of them more like ska type of bands and stuff. So, but it's interesting because, so how did you find other people within this genre and industry that had those same values? Because I've heard you talk about this before. There's like a name for it, right? It's
yeah.
What is it called?
Straight edge.
So was that a thing?
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely was. So like basically the idea of straight edge started in the early 80s, primarily around this band called Minor Threat, and like their group of friends they kind of had the same mentality. They're like, you know, we're punk rockers, but like we think that not smoking and not drinking is actually more punk than doing it. Because like I go to the high school kegger, and who's there? All the popular kids.
Sounds like a dare campaign.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
But like that was kind of the mentality, is like yeah, well, I'm more punk than you because I don't do that stuff, you know? So, um, they would, so at the time they would go to shows and, if you were a minor, they would put like a black X on your hands at the bar. So they'd be like, oh, no, you can't buy a beer because you're not 21. And, so they all started like Xing up their hands as kind of almost like a protest to like, yeah, I'm coming here to mosh and stage dive. I don't care about beer. I'm Xing up, you know, before I even get to the show. And so that straight edge idea was born out of like that group of people. And then over the years, it's just been kind of like adopted by like so many other bands and people, and is like a global thing. So and it's always been like a weird kind of like subgenre within, or like sub community within the punk scene. Or a sub ethos even, because it's not like straight edge people aren't hanging out with people that aren't straight edge or anything like that, or you know, there's exceptions obviously, but like straight edge people don't think they're better than non-straight edge people, right? Although there is that misperception out there, but it's an ethos, it's a personal thing. But in the hardcore community, there are a lot more like straight edge people, and so you meet those people, and that common value and like disdain for I don't know, just like the numbing your mind culture or whatever, you know, you bond with those people pretty tight. And so yeah, the first couple bands that I started were straight edge bands with just other people that were straight edge as well.
And it was that kind of after you moved to Seattle then? So you tried to start bands, and then once you moved, you had more success?
I was gonna say yes, but actually no. So I didn't really meet any other like straight edge people until I was out of high school, I think. But I was still living in Canada at the time. But yeah, we would, it was a Seattle based thing because like the practice rehearsal studios were in Seattle. So I would hop on the bus and go meet my friends at this rehearsal studio. And, so it was a Seattle based thing, but I moved to Seattle like super shortly after that. So yes and no, I guess.
Yeah. How did you find like kind of these people or these bands to join? Because I feel like, and this is such a 2000s thing to do, but at one point I was hopping on Craigslist and posting ads and looking for people to hang with, you know?
I don't know. You would just meet people at these shows, and they would become your circle. And then because punk rock and particularly hardcore is not particularly hard to play style of music, like you don't have to be overly talented. If you have a good drummer, that like is the most important thing, and then everything else kind of fits in around it. But you could kind of take your group of friends and piece together something, you know, as long as you could find a good drummer, you know, someone can figure out how to play bass, someone can figure out how to play guitar, anyone can yell. They have to figure out how to yell on time. But, so that was kind of how it would start. It was just me and my friends would get together, and, you know, there's always like instances where you try to start a band with a group of people and then it just doesn't click. It doesn't, you know, other priorities come into place. But yeah, I found a group of friends that we were all like-minded in our objectives, and we started playing together. And then once you kind of start to meet more people outside of your friend group within the broader community, it becomes a little bit easier because you can say, okay, I know this drummer, he's really good, or I know this bass player, she's awesome. She likes this style of thing, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. So playing in a band is interesting because it always starts as like a hobby, right? And then for some people, it kind of evolves into a full-time gig, at least for a while. You get put on a label, or somebody pays for, you know, a tour or something like that. So, I have two questions. The first is, what were you doing for work while you were kind of figuring it all out and playing with these bands? And then the second is kind of, when did you start to, like, at what point did you join a band that you kind of felt like, you kind of made it at some point?
So the first question on jobs, I mean, kind of anything that would have me,
Yeah.
I like, obviously, getting back to what I was saying earlier about school and not really caring about school. Like, obviously I didn't have higher education. Like, I didn't have a degree or anything like that. So it was, whatever blue collar job I could find. A lot of driving stuff. 'Cause I kind of fell in love is a strong way to talk about a job, but I liked the idea of having a job where I could like get away from, my boss or like whoever, and be on my own for a while, listen to a lot of music. And, so I would do different driving jobs. I worked at a windshield delivery place. I worked for a kitchen cabinet driving place. Ultimately, a lot of these jobs, like when I would go on tour, they would be cool with it for the first couple times, me taking like 2 weeks off here and there.
Yeah.
But eventually they'd be like, yeah, we can't really have you like coming and go on this often. Like, you have to pick one. And I'd be like, okay, peace.
Yeah. Well, on the tours, like, were you making any money from the tours at that time? Yeah. So collectively pooling your resources to kind of make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the jobs that you have between the tours are basically like you're using that to fund being able to eat and put gas in the tank and, buy shirts that you could sell or whatever. But ultimately I found a job who was cool with me leaving whenever I wanted to. And that was like a total godsend for me. It was a nonprofit organization called Northwest Senator. And it basically was it was a center to create jobs for people with disabilities. But specifically, I worked in this arm that went around and collect clothing donations. And then we would sell the clothing donations to thrift stores. And that funded the center. So it was a fundraising arm.
Okay.
But my boss was just really cool. He thought it was cool that I was in a band, and was kind of like, all right, yeah, just let me know like when you're going to be back. And so I kept that job for like a pretty long time through touring. And then once I stopped being in band, or once that band broke up that was touring, because I never stopped being in bands, but once that band broke up and I was home and I decided I wanted to go back to school, to college, I kept that job through college. And same thing. He would be like, yeah, just let me know like what your schedule is. We'll figure it out. And that was awesome. That was like a huge, I don't know, godsend for me.
Yeah, definitely. So you're kind of joining these bands and maybe going on tours sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, as far as the bands go? Because I know I've kind of, done some research on your band.
Mm-hmm.
At least the ones that I know the most about. I probably don't know about all of them.
Yeah,
but
there's no way.
yeah. But what would you say, at some point you're probably joining bands, and then there's a couple people that join another band, and then you keep hopping bands, right? Is that how that works? Or what's kind of the chronological order? Walk me through the most relevant bands that you feel like started to shape your life. And
well, the big one was Champion, and that was actually the second band that I started, and it was like almost like concurrent with the first band that I started. So it was one of the first bands that I ever started, and it was definitely not like we were figuring out what we were doing. We were building the ship as we were sailing it, basically.
Yeah.
Building the plane as we were playing it as we were flying it. But yeah, I mean, we had no idea what we were doing. We just knew that we wanted to do it, and so we did.
Yeah.
Wrote songs, figured out how to write songs, none of us really knew how to. Our drummer had been in some bands before, and so he kind of knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And then, I think we recorded it. This is a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly. I think we recorded a demo that we did a West Coast tour that I booked just through like people that I met in Yahoo chat rooms, like hardcore and punk chat rooms. People would, I'd hit them up and be like, hey, who can I talk to about like booking a show in this town? And I just kind of like mapped out, a West Coast tour, and we did it. Half of the band was like, this sucks, I'm out. And then the other half was like, yeah, this is awesome, let's keep doing it. And that's kind of like, that band specifically went through a lot of that for like the first, I don't even know, 4 years maybe. It wasn't like a thing that took off. It was like very much like fail, a little bit of almost success, but ultimately fail, struggle. And then I think, we finally got a group of people together that were all on the same page, as far as like what we wanted to do, which was like tour as much as we could. Cause that's what we loved doing. We liked to be in a different town every night, playing to however many people, 15 to 200. Yeah. If we were playing with a bigger band, maybe. Yeah. And meeting other bands, meeting other people, just the energy of those shows, experiencing different cities, I would say experiencing different food, but that came a little bit later, because definitely the first tours were like just filling your belly however you could. Yeah. But yeah, over the years, once we did also, that band Champion got some members along the way too that kind of knew what they were doing a little bit more. Like they had been in other bands and, would teach me things like, hey, we should do this. We should all like work on our strumming together so that like when we record, it's like, both guitars are playing the same thing and it's not like a little bit different. Sounds super tight. Just like stuff like that, people that knew how to write songs. And like, then I would start to learn, and the other people in my band who hadn't been in other bands would start to learn. And that was just kind of, I don't know, a very slow momentum thing, but I think it was really just the desire to do it and, the naivete of like, if we want to do it, we can do it, and then I think goals was a super important thing too, like setting goals, attainable goals, not like, okay, we started this band, let's go to Japan, It was like, okay, we started this band, let's do a demo. Okay, we did a demo, let's do a West Coast tour. Okay, cool, we did a West Coast tour, let's write a 7-inch, like a 4-song small record for people who don't know what 7 inches are.
Dating yourself.
And then, okay, cool, we have a 7-inch, let's do an East Coast tour.
Yeah.
And then, okay, after we did our first 7-inch, we did a second 7-inch, and then an LP. And after we toured the East Coast, we did the full US, and Canada. And then, okay, we did that. Let's go to Europe. Okay, we did that. Let's go to Japan. Okay, cool. We did that. Now let's go back to Europe. Now let's go to Australia. Like building on like making sure that we had like a next step along the way of like, cool, we did that. Like, what's the next thing that we should do was like a super important aspect of that.
How are you guys finding? So if you're going like global, right? Europe and Japan and all these countries, how are you getting your music out there? Like, what was the methodology behind if you guys were looking to eventually tour in other countries? Like, at what point were you like, this is worth it?
Yeah.
And you figured out kind of like why that happened.
So here, this is funny. This is like, depending on the age of whoever's watching or listening right now, you may have no idea what Soulseek is. But when the demo came out, when our first demo came out, Soulseek was like a huge thing, and it was like a music sharing platform. And you would go like search for a song and then or an artist or whatever, and then download whatever songs from, and it was like a community sharing thing, like a social media where people had like a list of music and they were giving you access to their list of music, and you could just download whatever you wanted. Yeah. And with like dial-up speeds, it took forever. So you would like queue a 12-song record or whatever, or album, and like you would just leave your computer on overnight, and then by the morning, hopefully, like all 12 songs were downloaded. So like, I think one cool thing too is like I could look at, there was like a chat too. So like, you could talk to the people that you were downloading music from. And so if I was downloading what I knew was like a pretty obscure hardcore band from someone, then I could assume that they're pretty like invested in the scene, in that style of music. And I could be like, oh, hey, here's my band's demo. You should download it from me. So that was a cool little like emerging technology. And then I think like, I'm trying to think, MySpace was another big one for us. But I think the biggest thing is just getting out there a lot, like touring as much as we could. I think so. The first label that we got on was a guy run by a guy who played in a band and also had shows at his house in Goleta, California. And I was there with another friend's band. I was roading for them, and we were playing there. And so that's how I first met him. And then when his band would come to Seattle, like, I'd hang out with him a little bit. And then when we had the demo, or our second demo, which was a lot better than the first one. So when we had our second demo, I sent it to him, and he was interested in doing a record for us. So we did a record with him. It was a great label for us at the time. Another band that we really liked that was like a similar style of hardcore that we played was on that label as well. And Mike was a friend. And so it was just like made perfect sense. About the time that we were thinking about doing a second record, that label, the original label, Fight Records, PHYTE, Fight Records, was kind of like, he was doing more with his band and less with his label. So that label was starting to peter out. And a band that we had played with had given our record or demo to their label, the guy that ran their label. And it was like actually like one of the more poppin' hardcore labels at the time, Bridge 9 Records. And was like, because we played with him in Seattle, and I guess he was just like, impressed with the response that we got, and kind of like really plugged us to Chris, who ran Bridge 9, and he was into it. So it was just like perfect timing, as this other label that we were on was kind of like petering out. Like one of the best labels like in the underground scene was interested in doing a record with us. And so that really opened up a lot of doors, because like they had a lot of hype, because some of the bigger, more like some of the bands that had like a lot of energy behind them were on this label. And so there was a lot of attention on this label globally.
Yeah.
So that really opened up a lot of doors to us.
Awesome. So you're still part of Champion at this point.
Yeah.
You guys have toured first locally and then internationally.
Yeah. I mean, by the time, but when we signed with Bridge 9, we hadn't toured internationally yet.
Okay.
And that's really what we played Canada. But Bridge 9 and their exposure overseas is what really like allowed us to go play Europe.
Oh, cool.
And then Japan, Australia.
So did
Korea.
they pay for that kind of tour for you guys?
What's up?
Did like your label pay for the things that you guys like, the tour stuff in some capacity?
No, we paid for everything. Just out of the money that we'd make at the shows and the merch and stuff like that. The way it works with a lot of labels too is like you get see if I even remember right, but basically you get all these records too, like records and CDs and stuff like that. And I think we were really lucky to be in a band at a time where CDs were like the main, like were really popular, and CDs are really cheap to buy, to make. Yeah. And so you can make decent a percentage of money on them actually. So CD sales really helped. And then we were also lucky that the time that we were a band also coincided with kind of like a return of vinyl as a really important to collectors, which it still is in the hardcore community, but it wasn't for a while, and it had just come back. And so we had, we could sell CDs, we could sell records, we could sell shirts, and all that stuff like helped us put gas in the tank and, be able to like pay for rent and stuff when we got home. We weren't making money, but we were like definitely doing enough to like pay the bills, which is all I ever wanted, Right. Yeah. Like I had never had these grand illusions of becoming a rock star or anything like that. And I didn't even really want to. It's just, like I said, I just wanted to travel with my friends and like be in a different city every day, experience a different culture every day, and feel this energy of this live music and the crowd participation every day. And if I could do that and break even, then awesome. Yeah. And we were able to do that. And that was like, I don't know, it was like such a profound experience for me in so many different ways.
Yeah. What would you say? I mean, so getting together a group of guys to play is hard enough, right? But then keeping those people together for an extended period of time, seems like a pretty tough gig, right? Like, I'm sure along the way you guys swapped out band members or lost some people or whatever, but how long did Champion run for total?
Like 8 years, I think.
Wow.
So we broke up in 2006. We started in 98 probably. So yeah.
Wow.
My math.
Yeah.
Is right.
Yeah. What was like the biggest show that you guys played, do you think?
Probably a festival. Like we played a couple festivals that were, had much bigger bands on them, but still it wasn't like we were playing arenas or anything like that. Like I think probably the biggest fest we played was either Hellfest in New Jersey or this one in Belgium called Grosrock, and each of those probably had about 10,000 people.
Interesting. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So,
but the average show, like we would be playing to anywhere between 40 to 400 people if we were lucky.
Wow.
So
that's pretty good.
Yeah. Depending on the city,
Yeah. So what would you say, I guess you played in Champion for 8 years. So how old are you? How old are you by the time Champion breaks up?
28 maybe, 27, somewhere in there.
And you moved to Seattle when you were 18, something like that?
Like 21 probably.
Okay. So then I guess we could jump around in the timeline, right? But what was kind of the ultimate thing, like the decision to end that band and then kind of move on to the next thing?
It wasn't really one thing. It was just kind of like a culmination of a bunch of things, like a bunch of small things. It wasn't like one big thing that were like, that's it. It was like a bunch of little things that were starting to add up, and like just the culmination of timing and things coming together that we started talking about, like, okay, what would it be like if we broke up? And we just kind of got excited about like the the idea of starting new bands that didn't necessarily have like the expectations. Really, I think we had a LP that was really well received. Like our first full length record was really well received in the community. And we had a lot of bigger labels within still within like the DIY scene, but like bigger labels, like borderline major labels that were kind of courting us, and we were talking with a label called EVR, Equal Vision Records, about doing a second record with them, which would have been a pretty big jump in like everything, like budget and exposure and stuff like that. And we were really excited about it. We really liked Steve, who ran the label, and like all the people that worked there. Like it was like a really good fit, but it was also like, how do I put this? Like when you do a record with a label, there's almost an expectation that they're investing a lot of money in you, so you want to invest a lot of time for them to recoup the money.
Yeah.
It's different with a major label where it's like same thing. You want to recoup the money so that they don't sue you or whatever, however it works in the major label industry. But like when it's a DIY label, like, and there's personal relationships with people, like the people that run the labels become your friends.
Yeah.
So you don't want to screw them over by doing a record and then like breaking up 3 months later, and then they're sitting on like a stack of records and they've got to build a house out of CDs that never get sold or whatever. Yeah. So that was just the idea of wanting to invest the next like chunk, year or two in touring hard, like putting Steve's faith in us, like giving that justice and rewarding that faith in us. Or the idea of like, well, we could just break up and stop doing this and we could just start new bands, and those expectations aren't there, and it's a lot more I don't know, just like pure, I guess.
Yeah.
And then just other things like those were some of my closest friends, but like you spend every waking hour in a van with 4 other people for 8 months out of the year. It's like a pretty intense social experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So, no matter how much you love someone, like there are things that drive you crazy about what they do, and vice versa. So,
yeah,
I don't know, just like a lot of different things that we're like, let's just end. And another thing too that I got excited about is, we talked earlier about how I hated school and just did the bare minimum to get by. When I was traveling, I really fell in love with reading. Reading about cultures, reading about history of places we were traveling, be in Europe and I'd be reading stories about like World War II or, whatever. And so I really, at that point, was craving school, which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so I knew that as soon as the band broke up, I was going to go back to school. And that was another thing too. I got excited about going back to school.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's an interesting kind of point. I think a lot of people, they either are told they have to figure it all out and pick a major in college right away. And a lot of the kids that went directly to 4-year colleges that I know from high school either dropped out because of the pressure. They didn't like what they did. Even people who did go to college for something ended up doing something completely different. And I think there's a lot of pressure on kids to have it figured out really early on.
Absolutely.
And I think that there's not a lot of people out there saying, go chase what you love when you're young.
Yeah.
Figure out a way to do it. And when the time comes, you'll kind of figure out a way to make your passion reality or make money or something. So it's interesting kind of your journey to just being like, I don't really want to do school.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to like do the things that I want to do and kind of build my life around that, and then coming full circle. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mention this, but I did 2 semesters of community college, or 2 quarters, I don't remember, of community college out of high school. And it was just basically a waste of money, you know? And when I went back to school, those credits didn't, you know, they didn't apply. So it was basically like I lit that money on fire, that money and that time on fire.
Yeah.
But going back when I wanted to, I still didn't know like what I wanted to study. I thought maybe history or literature. Like those were 2 things that I was really interested. But then again, like, what can I do with those degrees? Like, I just knew I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to learn. I wanted to get a degree in something, because it doesn't really matter what your degree is in ultimately. But, and here's another like secret. It shouldn't be a secret, but like, if you're 28 years old and you're going to college, you can get a lot of money from the government in grants. You can get, so, I mean, particularly if you're not working, paying jobs, you're working crappy, minimum wage jobs, and you're 28 years old and you apply for a grant, they're like, wow, this dude's old and he's making like, I don't know, 18 grand a year. Like, he's poor. We need to give him some money. So like, you can get solid grants and get a lot of your college paid for when you're older.
Yeah.
So
was it discouraging to go back to school, kind of feeling like I'm 28, I'm going to be joining kids that are 18, fresh out of high school, you know? Or I think there's just like, there's a lot of people that I've spoken to that they go back later in life and they have these things in the back of their head, you know? Is it really worth it? You know, am I going to have to go and do a lot of back work to like be able to qualify for schools? Like, how did you kind of manage that for yourself?
So, yeah, I mean, no, I was just so excited to do it that I didn't really care about that. And it was like, I wasn't going for a social aspect. It wasn't like I was like, okay, I'm going to go join a frat and like, you know, party every weekend. It was like, yeah, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to learn, you know, I got an apartment that I share with my roommate, and like, you know, I'll go home and study and then go to bed and wake up and do it again. And then I have this awesome job that will let me, you know, kind of come and go as I need. So that was awesome. But as far as like prerequisites, I think it's actually easier when you're older, because when you want to go from high school to university, you got to do your SATs. You got to make sure you have all the requisites for a 4-year university. I went to a community college. I got my associate's degree. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
I got awesome grades, and it was easy for me to get into the University of Washington for my final 2 years. And frankly, a lot of these bigger schools, may just be my experience, but I feel like a lot of these bigger universities, the professors there are largely invested in their own research work that they're doing, and like study and teaching is like a side gig so that they can use the labs or whatever. So a lot of the community college teachers are like way more passionate, and I found that I was enjoying those classes even more than the big university classes. But yeah, I mean, that road from put school in my past until I'm ready to actually do it, and then do it, get awesome grades, be on the honor roll. When I wrote my, I can't remember what it's called, but when you apply to university, you have to write like a personal, like essay, that kind of tells your story and why you want to go to that school. And what I did was I used my band experience as an analogy in that essay, or like a metaphor, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember it was centered on like the things that I learned playing in a punk rock band and how that applies to my higher education.
Yeah.
And I think that was really well received as well.
And what did you go to school like for? What was your kind of desired major?
Yeah, so going back to what you were saying earlier, like you expect these 16, 17-year-old kids to know what they want to do and then pursue college. Like I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Like when I grow up, I was 28. I just knew I loved reading. I loved classic literature. I loved history. And so those were like classes that were of interest to me, but I also know those are fields that are like not you can't just go out and get jobs in abundance in those fields. So I didn't know. I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna say, in my essay, I just made up that I was going to be a business major, which I don't think I ever took one business class.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I didn't want to take any business classes. Like the wait lists were long for new students, but like I ultimately just ended up going into communication because the communications classes that I had were really interesting to me, both in community college and at University of Washington. And then once I was in those classes, I realized public relations was a field that I could kind of apply to anything in the world. Like if I wanted to work in pro sports, or if I wanted to work for a nonprofit, or like a hospital, or whatever, like public relations is kind of a field that you can go into anything. And so that's kind of why I chose PR too. It was like, well, I still don't know what I want to do. I'm now a junior in college.
Yeah.
But I know that if I go into public relations, I could do anything, or, go into any field,
Sure.
Even music. Although I knew I didn't want to go in the music industry because I'd seen enough of it to know that I didn't want that to be like, I didn't want that to be my 9 to 5,
Yeah. Why is that?
I think just like the idea of like separation of church and state, I didn't want to make my love something that became a task for me to do, I just didn't want it to like spoil it.
Yeah.
So
I had a feeling you were going to say that because I felt the exact same way. At some point I started to do music industry studies, right? And I started to get into the music industry, and the more I got into the business side of the music industry, the less I wanted to do music.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I ended up getting an associates in music industry studies, and then flipping back and doing something different, just like that. So it's an interesting point that you can. Sometimes you think the thing you want to do professionally is the thing that really drives you, personally.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think there's some value in separating those things too.
Yeah. I mean, people say there's a common saying that's like, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life, which I totally agree with. But I don't know. I just felt like in this instance, I didn't want to, I don't know. I wanted there to be a gap, I wanted to mind the gap.
Right. Yeah. So you went to college and you're not playing in bands during this time at all? Are you still in the scene at all? Or
yeah, I absolutely still in the scene. I think when I was in college, I was in another band.
Okay.
I tried to do a couple bands immediately after Champion broke up. I had one with some friends that played like 3 or 4 shows and then broke up. I was in another one called Poverty Based Saints, which is less hardcore and more traditional punk rock. We did like 1 US tour, put out a 7-inch, but that was like super part-time. It wasn't like Champion where the goal was to get out on the road and be out on the road constantly. Like I was in school and that was my priority. And so my priority for that band, as well as like the priorities of people in the band, was like, okay, we'll do stuff here and there and when we can. And, we'll contribute to the scene. So there were a couple bands that I was in through college. I think, yeah, I just always been in random bands, and some have played one show, some have played no shows, and some have played hundreds of shows. And so, yeah.
So, did you meet Avery in college?
When I was in college, but she wasn't at my school, so she was just a friend of a friend.
Okay.
So, and she also like came from like the hardcore music scene as well. So,
Oh, cool.
like that was something that we had in common.
So when did you guys kind of officially, I don't know, meet or start dating?
Yeah, so we first met on the street, basically. Like I was meeting up with some friends, and she was like hanging out with them, and that's when we first met.
Yeah.
When we first started dating, it was like a few months later, but this is kind of a funny story. I went on a double date with a friend of mine, and he was on a date with her, and I was on a date with a friend of mine who was visiting from out of town. And yeah, we went on a date, and there wasn't no disrespect to the girl that I was on a date with, because she's still like a friend, but like there wasn't like, magic.
Yeah.
So anyways, we were on this double date, and Avery and I found out that we were like spending more time like engaging with each other than we were like our dates, which is a funny story, but kind of maybe a cliche kind of double date ironic story. But yeah.
Wow.
And then we just kind of started hanging out for a while. And then yeah, it just kind of happened. So
was she cool with you like touring and everything, or how did that work out?
I wasn't touring as much by then.
Okay.
Because I was in school. So yeah, she was always supportive, but I wasn't leaving that much, to be honest. Like a couple weeks here and there, maybe. So, and then this was kind of a bummer, but her program that she was at Seattle U closed. And so she grew up in Vegas, was in Seattle for school, and then her program closed. So she either had to change her major or transfer, and she ended up transferring to UNLV.
Okay.
So she basically we did like the long distance relationship thing for 3 years, which was kind of crazy, but
wow,
worked out.
Yeah. Any advice there for keeping that going for 3 years, long distance?
I don't know. No,
is this
not really.
How good were the webcams at this point? Were they pretty good?
I don't think we webcammed at all. We
Really?
talked on the phone a lot, but yeah.
Huh.
Probably AIM. We probably AIM chatting each other.
Okay.
We used to talk a lot on AIM. For those of you who don't know, AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
When we first started, like, I don't know, crushing on each other. But probably by that time it wasn't as big. But yeah, we'd talk on the phone a lot, but it wasn't really like a webcammer.
Yeah. Do you remember when they used to give out those little CDs, those like AOL dial-up CDs?
Yeah.
We'd get them and like pop them in. And
absolutely.
I don't remember what they were for, but it was around the same time as
I think they were like loaded with hours, because AOL was like kind of expensive.
Yeah, it was something like that.
But you get CDs that have like 1,000 free hours or something on it.
Before we move on, I was going to ask you, so on one of the podcasts that I'd watched you on before, you had talked about something that kind of happened within Champion with one of the members. And I actually kind of found your response to be very eye-opening to the type of person that I feel like you are, to your character. And we don't have to share this on this podcast if you're not comfortable with it, but is that something you kind of want to talk about a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, let's chat about it. It's never a fun thing to chat about, but I think it's important. And so years after Champion broke up, some allegations came out about the singer of the band. And I won't get into like specifics about them, but like allegations of like sexual improper relationships and potentially with minors and lacking consent. And I think this was something that still is to this day. Like, it's something that came out 8 years ago, and it's still pretty like soul crushing for me, because the way that the band operated, like we always tried to hold each other to a higher standard and hold each other accountable. And so when this came out, it was really soul crushing. It's like the best way that I can describe it. Particularly for me and the other members of this band, feeling like the whole time we thought that we were all on the same page, and to find out that there were allegations that one of us wasn't and was doing like gross stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, and someone that I love, still love him. I haven't talked to him in years, but like still love him. I hope that he's good and he's like, kind of figured out a better way to operate and deal with people. But like the stuff that he was doing is not cool with me, and not cool with any of us. And so it was very, when it came out, it still is, but very like depressing, it really like spiraled me into depression for years and years and years. And still, like, occasionally, like, there'll be moments where, something will trigger like, just like a deep spiral into it, But at the same time, I think, while it's hard to talk about, I think it's important to talk about, because I think a lot of people don't talk about, people aren't talking about consent enough in our communities and really in the world at large.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think about rape and sexual assault in a very specific way, probably largely because of like how the media portrays it. Like, we think about rape and sexual assault as something that happens in a dark alley with strangers, and a lot of people, I don't think, are there. To say they're not aware is probably not the right thing, because I think people are aware, but I don't think there's enough of recognition that like consent extends way beyond that. I think there's things in play like power structure at work, in your communities. There's things in play like alcohol, drugs, if you're taking advantage of a drunk person.
Yeah.
There's things in play like just not being ongoing and active in consent. Age, obviously, huge one. And I think, I fear that a lot of men are not honest with themselves about like how they're interacting with in their sexual, I don't know, proclivities.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's important to talk about, even though it's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Particularly for people like me who have such a weighted thing where when they talk about it, it takes you to a dark place and you're like, but like, I do think it's important to talk about.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important for people to understand what consent is and why it's important. And I think particularly, we've talked a lot in this podcast about like our communities and like our fitness cult or whatever, like, little communities that you build around yourselves, there's so much potential for those kinds of like problematic relationships to occur, particularly in communities that are largely male dominated, like jiu-jitsu, like punk rock music. There's a lot of potential for that kind of stuff to happen, and we're seeing it happen. We're seeing. I won't say like any specific examples, but we're seeing it get some visibility in the jiu-jitsu community as well recently.
For sure.
And I think it's a good thing ultimately. Like it's a shitty thing for the women that have to be vocal and like talk about their experiences. But it's a shittier thing for them to live with their experiences without feeling like they can talk about it. Like they should be ashamed to talk about it. Like they did something wrong when they absolutely did not. So
yeah. And I appreciate you kind of being vulnerable and talking about those things, because I agree with you that I think that it's something that needs to be said sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to kind of talk about it as a whole. So I really appreciate you kind of being willing to share that. And, also just getting to the subject of dealing with like, how do you accept that about a friend? How do you move on and deal with, like you said, if you're struggling with depressive thoughts or things that kind of come back and get you some days.
Yeah.
And I have some thoughts around things that if I'm struggling with things like that, things that I find helpful, but I'd like to get your kind of opinion on when you feel things like that in your life that are kind of like, shitty to deal with or bogging you down.
Yeah.
Like, how do you cope with those things? Like, what's your strategy for pulling yourself out of kind of a dark place?
Yeah, I mean that's the golden question. Because everyone's different,
Yeah.
Like people deal with depression in different ways, and I don't think there is a silver bullet approach that's going to work for everyone. I know for a fact, like the different individuals within my band that are that have been working through it have done it through different means, whether it be like seeking the help of a professional or whatever. Creating new art and addressing it in that new art. Whether it be lyrically in the new band, which is something that has definitely helped for us. But I don't know. There's not. I would say there's probably not a silver bullet. Everyone just needs to find the approach that works best for them. I will say over the years, like therapy is something that's getting a lot less of a like social stigma compared to what it's used to be, which is great because I think that's probably one of the healthiest things that you can do. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough thing, like
for sure.
If I knew the answer, then I definitely would have not had as many deep spirals into like troubling, state of minds or like sleepless nights rolling over,
Yeah,
but
definitely. When you kind of found jiu-jitsu at an interesting point in life, right? Kind of, how old are you? You're
48, I think.
48. Yeah, and you just became a father.
I did.
48. So, and how? This is kind of a subtopic, but how does that feel for you, being like a new dad at 48? Did you kind of picture yourself always being a father, and did you wait until this point for a reason, or?
No, I don't know if I ever really knew if I wanted to be a father or not,
Yeah.
I think I'm a pretty, I'm a pretty like one foot in front of the other person.
Yeah.
So if you can't tell from the conversation already, but, um, so yeah, I mean, it was always something I was open to, but it was not like, oh yeah, definitely need to be a dad or there's no way, like no kids. So it was always something that interested me. Just seeing friends that are fathers and the experience that they have and how much they love their kids and how much joy they bring me, or sorry, bring them. But like at the same time, I also like love to travel and I love to like be a pretty independent person. I love to, um, go to jujitsu 5 times a week, and
Yeah.
having a kid certainly, uh, I mean, you fit the things that you love into the life with them and around them, but it certainly is something that you have to like sacrifice some of that for. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Avery and I have been married now for um, 8 years, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
Got married in 2016. So whatever the math is on that. And I think, yeah, I don't know. This is a rambling answer because it wasn't really, we just kind of got to a point where it was always, maybe it's in the future, not now. And then we got to a point where like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, yeah, let's do it. And then the next day it was like, yeah, let's do it. And let's figure out kind of like the plan. Part of the plan was moving down here so that we could be close to family. We're from Seattle. We moved to San Luis Obispo 3 years ago. So, that was certainly a step in that, like, yeah, let's do it.
For sure.
Journey.
Yeah.
Or plan.
And what was the thing? I mean, you said you moved here for a reason. What was the thing that kind of like, I don't know, brought you into jiu-jitsu in the first place?
So, jiu-jitsu was something that kind of became on my radar in the last 5 years or so. I've had friends that have done it longer than that and that have started around that time. But really the main thing is just like seeing friends that did it and how much they love it. And when they talk about it, it piqued my interest. And so for maybe like a year or two before I actually started, it was something that I was like, that seems fun and I should try it sometime. And then ultimately what made me take the plunge is when we were living down here, I would run by Paragon. Like I would run like 5 times a week or so. And I would run by the Paragon and I'd be like, oh, I should check out that jiu-jitsu gym. And then my wife is also in a fitness cult. She's a bar instructor.
Yeah.
And a lot of her fellow bar instructors, not a lot, but like a handful of her fellow bar instructors, husbands or partners are at Paragon. And I met some of them, specifically Aaron Steed, Mitch, and Sebastian at like this bar Halloween or holiday party, like a Christmas party. And Avery's like, hey, Chris wants to do jiu-jitsu. Because I think first I tried to get her to join with me. I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And she's like, absolutely not, but you should. And then so she like kind of like outed me to them. It was like, hey, Chris wants to do jiu-jitsu. And they're like, you totally should. And I think like them being so friendly and welcoming and encouraging was really about made me take the plunge. Like Aaron got my number and he like texted me that night and he's like, hey, let me know like when you want to come, I'll come with you. And so then I just like, all right, I emailed through the website and I went in and talked with Jeremy for like 15 minutes before class and kind of instantly fell in love with it. So
yeah, I mean, it's what's weird for me knowing you now is that I wonder what you did with all your time before jiu-jitsu, like, for people who don't know Chris personally, he spends a lot of time watching tutorials. And I mean, you're probably the most technical person that I like. You're always coming in with a new technique. You're not, you're not trying to like force your way through positions that shouldn't work, but you know what I mean, for maybe a bigger guy. Yeah, did you replace something in your life with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of always had an obsessive personality. Like the stuff that my hobbies and like passions, I've kind of like dove into.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily replacing anything. It's just like adding another thing.
Yeah.
And then that thing like maybe pushes some of the other things in terms of like timeshare. But yeah, I mean, playing music, obviously, skateboarding when I did that. I guess it kind of replaced skateboarding to a degree. Like a few years before I started jiu-jitsu, I kind of stopped skateboarding just because it hurt too much.
Yeah.
Like it would take longer and longer for me to like walk it off after I fell. And, you get to a certain age and your bones aren't as resilient and like your head hurts from like jostling around and maybe not being hydrated enough.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't like I stopped and then overnight I started jiu-jitsu maybe like 3 or 4 years later, but that certainly took a lot of like the mind share and focus and appetites that skateboarding gave me that I couldn't do because I was too old, and so I replaced it with doing a combat sport, which I don't know if that makes sense, but it does make sense if you do, if you know jiu-jitsu. But there's a lot of parallels between skateboarding and jiu-jitsu, and like the technique and balance and just like focus on details. I think another one that's super important is like skateboarding. There's so much failure. You try a trick and it's like fail for weeks sometimes. And then finally you do it right. And it's like the greatest thing in the world, the greatest feeling in the world. And I think also in skateboarding, like all your friends see you focusing on the thing. And then when you finally do it, they're so psyched for you. Right.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu's like that too. Like if you're working on something and you tap a black belt, not that happens for me, but like you tap an upper belt, they're psyched for you. They're not like, oh, I can't believe this blue belt like tapped me out. They're like, that was awesome. You know, it's cool.
Yeah. I think community has a lot to do with that. I think when I found jiu-jitsu originally, I was missing the community aspect. Yeah. And it was really discouraging for me at the beginning because I felt like I didn't belong or like, I was missing that feeling that you just kind of described where like it makes you want to keep coming back after you just got your ass kicked. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is kind of a hard thing with jiu-jitsu is some days you go home and there's no music on the way home. You just kind of sit in silence and think about if you want to come back.
You're like, I can't believe I suck at this suck this bad at this after dedicating this much time in my life to it.
Yeah. Which can be discouraging, right? Like for me, I don't know if you ever feel this, but there are literally days that I have where I feel like the best, like on top of the world. And there are days where that feeling you just described, I get it. And if I don't go back within a certain amount of time, I question whether I will ever come back.
Totally. So, I kind of realized pretty quick that like you have to go back ASAP because a lot of my best days are after my worst days. Like I'll definitely leave the gym some days being like, man, I just got my ass kicked and like I suck at this and like, is it even fun? Not really. And then the next day I'll go and I'll have like the most fun. Yeah. I feel like it did really well. And I don't know. That's one of the really cool things about jiu-jitsu that I love is just like it can that switch could get flipped that quick from like just absolutely miserable day to like on top of the world feeling.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah. And so you're still, I mean, to this day, you're still playing in a band, right? And what's the band?
Kind of.
a little bit.
technically, but maybe not. So, what year was this? Right before COVID. This is a long story actually, but I'll try to make it short. Right before COVID kind of happened, I played guitar in Champion. The other guitar player in Champion had a music project that he was doing, and a lot of it was the lyrical content. What he's singing in this band. A lot of the lyrical content of this is really centered on the experiences of Champion and like overcoming depression, learning forgiveness. Like a lot of really almost the whole record is like, lyrically directly inspired or tied to those experiences of just finding out that something that you thought was so pure had like such an ugly aspect to it. So he did this project, and it was going to be like a recording project first. Like he was just going to do it as therapy kind of.
Yeah.
I think he was doing actual therapy too, so I don't get the wrong idea. But like, it was like an important aspect of his therapy was to like do art about it, So once it was done, he sent it to me, and he was like, "Hey, here's this thing I've been working on." And I was like, this is really good. Like you need to like have this be a band and actually like play shows. Cause I think it's really good. B, I think it's important for you, but I also think it's important. I think there's other people that can hear this and like, draw important things from it, whether it be lessons or things they already know and feeling like, wow, someone else feels that way. All that stuff. Basically, I was like, you got to do this band. And he was like, okay, well, will you be in it? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
So that band's called Change. He recorded the record with some other people, and then I joined the band. Before the record even came out, so we played one show in Tacoma, and then this is not how typical bands operate, but it's how we operate because we're psychos. Another friend of ours in Barcelona also had a similar experience. Like he sent it to a Ram sent it to him, and a friend Gabby in Barcelona was like, "This is awesome! Like when you have your band together, like come play my fest. I do a music fest. He does a music festival called Can't Keep Us Down in Barcelona, and he's like, come play the fest whenever you're ready." And so our second show was in Barcelona.
Wow.
Followed by like a week of shows in Europe.
Yeah.
Which is something that you can do when you're part of a community and you have established relationships through like being in the community for years and going over there with previous bands. Like you can have your friends book shows for you and then go play in Europe, and you're not going to make your money back doing a week of small shows in Europe, but we're also adults and we have jobs and we can afford stuff like that. So yeah, our second through, 10th shows were in Europe. And then COVID happened. Let's see, that was, I think, January or February in 2020. So we literally got home and then like the entire world shut down.
Yeah.
In fact, our drummer flew from Europe to Thailand to just go skate with some friends in Thailand, and then flew back to Europe for a tour with his band.
Wow.
Or with another band that he's in.
Yeah.
And when he was in Europe, before the tour was over, like is when Trump shut the borders down.
Wow.
And they basically were like, if you want back into the country, you have to come home in the next like 3 days. And so they had to cancel their tour, or the back half of their tour, and fly home. And then our record came out during COVID, and then we did we're all like adults, and like everyone's got families and other priorities, other bands that they're playing in. So we've done a handful of things here and there, and then the last year and a half, we've been taking time off to write music, which was the intention, but we haven't really. There's music that's written, but we haven't like gotten together and jam on it yet. So, basically, the band's a group chat at this point.
Yeah.
We're definitely still a band. We'll definitely still play. We will play shows again someday. Hopefully, record a new record someday. But right now, it's usually us sharing memes or like whatever.
It's equally as important, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and you're also a part of this kind of like hardcore scene here in Slow.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you're pretty involved, and you help set up shows, or what's the deal?
Yeah. So me and 4 other friends are involved in a just like a DIY nonprofit collective where we book shows, and we used to do it out of a children's clothing store that 2 of the people in our collective owned. That business, unfortunately, went under last year, and now we're kind of just doing it at different venues. But yeah, we're booking. It's not a full-time gig or anything like that. It's just kind of like something we do, like a show a month or two a month maybe, at various venues. And I mean, it's the same thing, just like being involved in the community, contributing in some way, trying to bring bands to, Slow is not an A market. And so a lot of bands, when they're on tours, they're hitting LA and they're hitting San Francisco and maybe not much in between, but like trying to get more bands to come. We're definitely not the only people that are doing it, because there are certainly a lot of people that are doing a lot of good stuff like that in the community, even in the same scene. But yeah, we're just trying to contribute it, help have a couple more shows, bring specific bands that we really like, stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you feel kind of like driven to give back to the community, just, being where you are now, and just for all the people that kind of stuck their necks out for you along the way, or what kind of drives you to do this now?
Yeah, I mean, just the community building aspect has always been important to me, is bringing people together, giving them a space to collaborate. I think one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had with this collective that we do called Village Hardcore Shows, because the first shop was in AG in the Village. Most of our shows are in Slow now, but one of the most rewarding things, or the things that excited me the most, is like there were a couple of like there was a lot of like high school kids that would come from the area, and some of those kids like started bands, and like when they started bands, they would be like, "Hey, I'm doing a new band," and they're like, "Do you want to hear it?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." Like, but we're gonna throw you on a show. Like, we don't even need to hear it. Like, it was like, whether or not it was good or not was not as important as being able to like give them a space to do this thing. They would come to the shows and they would enjoy it. Like I said, the punk and hardcore scene, it's such a reciprocal energy. A band playing to no crowd is boring. A band playing to even like a big crowd of people just standing there like nodding their heads is boring. But like when there's a reciprocal energy, like it's really exciting. And then those people that are having fun in the crowd are starting bands, and then they're able to like, give back to this reciprocal energy, and make friends with the other bands that are playing, and it just like strengthens the community, and is such a like an important fact. And another thing too that's like crucial is like the people in our collective, we're all like we're all old people. We're all like in our 40s. We all have families. So it's when you're young in punk and hardcore scene, it's like such a everyday thing. Like you're going to every show you can. Like if I'm going to 3 shows in 1 week, awesome.
Yeah.
Like if it's more, even better. But like as an adult, it's hard. There's so many priorities that are taking you in different directions. And so when you're able to contribute to a scene that has reciprocal involvement like that, and now there's these kids, high school kids that have come to a show, they get excited about it, they're starting bands, they want to book shows, like it's not something that we ever want to have a monopoly on. We want to just be like a launching pad for younger, more enthusiastic, everyday people to be able to do it,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's super cool. And fitting for this podcast too, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is, if you were going to give yourself advice, either kind of growing up or just like at any point, throughout your journey, is there something that you feel like you would tell your younger self to kind of like inspire them in some way? Or like, what would you say to, if there was somebody just starting out, right? They're 21 in this area, they're trying to make it in the hardcore scene. What's some kind of like a little bit of advice that you would leave them with?
I mean, the first thing is just like, this is cheesy, but like do it yourself is like a real thing. Like you can do any, I mean, I don't know, that's oversimplification, but like you don't need anything that you want to do. You can make it happen, especially if you find other people that are similarly driven by the same goals. Now that can be the toughest thing sometimes is finding other people that are on the same page as you. But like when you do, it's the results are like so exponentially, you're flying, you're running instead of walking. But yeah, just, I think one of the scariest things of like a DIY mentality sometimes can be just like the fear of failure. And like, I want to do that, but like, I don't really know how to do it. I need to learn how to do it before I can do it. And then you never end up doing it because you don't want to be a novice at something. You want to hit the ground as an expert. I think that mentality, particularly for some mind, like everyone has different brains, and some people their mindsets like that even more. So I don't know, just the what we were saying about skateboarding and jiu-jitsu earlier, like fail. Don't be afraid of failure. Like every failure that you experience is going to get you closer to that success. And then, when the success happens, it just makes it more rewarding. So yeah, I think it would be that, just if you want to do something, do it. Understand that it's not going to be amazing at first, but like you can take steps along the way through your failures, through your learnings to make it amazing.
Yeah, it's really good advice. And I think that, for me and a lot of people, I think everybody they want things to be buttoned up 100% and perfect before they kind of try something. And most of the time, the people who went out and did it, they just did it. You know what I mean? Like they did it, they got it wrong. They did it 100 times wrong. And then one day it just kind of clicked, So I think that's really good advice. And I think that's a really good place to end, man. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Dude, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. And, maybe someday we'll get you back on and we'll make you talk a little bit more.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.